Вдруг, как в сказке, скрипнула дверь. Все мне ясно стало теперь. Столько лет я спорил с судьбой ради этой встречи с тобой. Мерз я где-то, плыл за моря. Знаю, это было не зря. Все на свете было не зря. Не напрасно было.
Hey guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Ivan and I have been an influencer on this platform for around 5 years. Anywhere you look at my channel, you have dozens of likes, not just a few smattering of likes that anybody can achieve, but dozens, consistent dozens of likes and hundreds of views. Just amazing. I want to welcome my dudes and my homies who are watching this. I know who you are, you know who you are, and I know who you are also. And also, to the young honeys who might be watching this, you know me, and I know who you are also. I know you from the inside out. This channel is dedicated to measured and constructive criticism, and today we're gonna turn our attention to one Konstantin Kisin. And so he made a video for PragerU that is titled Why I Left Utopia. And so here you might ask, Ivan, you're gonna go after a guy who's going after the Soviet Union. Who are you, Ivan, deep inside of you? Do you secretly wish for Russia to take Donbass, all the while pretending to be an American liberal? It's like, dude, why don't you just shut the fuck up with these accusations? Who the fuck are you to ask me these questions? You know what I mean, man? That's just unacceptable. Somebody might think that Ivan is a crypto Soviet, Soviet person, somebody who wishes to go back to the Soviet Union secretly. He's a coward. He's a coward because of the massive views that I get here. I have been captured by my audience to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And again, dude, like, why are you asking me these questions? I don't fucking understand why. Am I supposed to kind of explain myself to you about everything that pops into your stupid head? Why don't you just shut the fuck up, alright, man? Now, I don't begrudge the fact that Konstantin Kisin doesn't like the Soviet Union. I'm not a fan myself. The thing about him that I do find annoying is that, for example, the title of this PragerU video is Why I Left Utopia. This motherfucker was 11 years old when he left the Soviet Union, and I think it was collapsing completely at that point. And half of his life or most of his life in the Soviet Union was under Mikhail Gorbachev. And he was not one to make the decision to leave. I imagine that at 11 years old, his opinion was not dominant as to whether to leave or stay. But the thing with Konstantin is that he's almost presenting himself almost as if he was like a member of the opposition, like a refusnik in the Soviet Union. You would almost like he just dramatizes the banality. The Soviet Union was collapsing, people left, my family left, his family left. There's nothing really that dramatic about it. And the Soviet Union that he was escaping from was not the Soviet Union of Joseph Stalin. And so what I dislike about him, what gives me the douche chills, is this kind of self-importance. It's like, dude, just relax, my dude. It's so good. You don't like the Soviet Union, that's cool, but don't make it sound as if you're some sort of opposition member or some sort of a glorified figure who made a conscious decision to leave. Your parents left and you left. My parents left and I left. So that's basically it, my dude. And when he was living in the Soviet Union, much of this was under Gorbachev when he was born. He was born before Gorbachev, but Gorbachev came in a few years, and he was living in Moscow, which is the most elite part of the Soviet Union, where people did not experience the same level of shortages of basic goods that many people in the vast provinces of Russia and the Soviet Union experienced. So he lived in a pretty privileged environment, by Soviet standards. And so that's what I object to, my dude. Like, that's my objection, is just the self-importance of the thing. But you don't like the Soviet Union, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine, all right, man? It's all right. It's so good, okay?
I grew up in a progressive paradise. The gap between the haves and the have-nots was practically non-existent. The literacy rate was almost 100%. Healthcare was universal and free. No one fought over race, religion, or class. Maternity leave was generous. Childcare was free. There were no limits on abortion. So where was this paradise? No, it wasn't Norway, Sweden, or Finland. It was the Soviet Union. Everything I just described was true, and yet life in the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was a living hell. Yes, income inequality barely existed, but that was because everyone was equally poor. Appliances, consumer products, and fresh food were scarce. If you wanted a car, good luck. You'd be on a waiting list for 10 years. Yes, women were emancipated, but they spent most of their time waiting in line for hours for food to feed their children. Disposable diapers were unheard of, as were vacuum cleaners. A dishwasher? Are you kidding?
My dudes, don't let PragerU lie to you about appliances in the Soviet Union. They're getting away with some scandalous lies. Now, it's true that there were no dishwashers in the Soviet Union, and it's true that there were no diapers in the Soviet Union. What is a complete and utter lie is that there were no vacuum cleaners in the Soviet Union. You motherfucker, if you want a Soviet vacuum cleaner, you can find one on eBay for like $200 plus. They did exist. I do remember them, and this is bullshit. You know, we have to do serious history here. We have to answer for our careless words on this program. You know, just sort of shamelessly lying like that. There were vacuum cleaners available to the proletariat back in the day. You know, fuck you, Kisin, for lying again about the motherland. Comrades, Tovarishim, there's even something more spicier and more important that was said, even bigger than the vacuum cleaner. And this is where Kisin said that life in the Soviet Union was living hell. So I find this to be a bit of hyperbole. Now I have a Gallup poll here. This one dates back, it's kind of old, it's from 2013. And the title here is Former Soviet Countries See More Harm from Breakup. Now, these Soviet countries do not include Baltic states. So Baltic states, we know they have no nostalgia for the Soviet Union, except for maybe the Russian population there. However, you know, what's more interesting is these other countries of the Soviet Union where this poll happened, where many people have chose harm rather than benefit when asked what happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So in Armenia, 66% harm. Kyrgyzstan, 61% harm. Ukraine, 56% harm. Now this, I'm sure, has gone way down to nothing after the war with Russia, but that's what it was back in the day. In Russia, 55% said that there was more harm. Tajikistan, 52, Moldova 42, Belarus 38, Georgia 33, Azerbaijan 31, Kazakhstan 25%, and Turkmenistan clocking it at 8%. Things, if you know what's going on in Turkmenistan, you know, some amazing things happened there anyway, well, so what do we make of this? So the point for me is not to promote nostalgia for the Soviet Union. I myself have no nostalgia for the Soviet Union. Ultimately, the Soviet Union is an experiment. And in its earlier days, and under Joseph Stalin, it was an exceptionally bloody experiment. And it became a less bloody experiment overall, and then it collapsed. But nevertheless, I have no nostalgia for it. I just think that saying that life there for everyone was living hell is a bit of hyperbole. Now this poll has that I cited is pretty old. If you're interested in more recent polling on this question, Google nostalgia for the Soviet Union wiki page, and you can see different polling there. But you know, nostalgia even exists in East Germany, strangely enough. So it is what it is. I think a lot of the people there who reminisce about the Soviet Union, they were younger then, they were more energetic, it was the country of their youth, and then all of a sudden everything collapsed and their money disappeared, there was corruption everywhere, a rise in crime, etc. So comparing the post-Soviet space to the Soviet Union, a lot of people have romanticized ideas of the Soviet Union. For example, when Leonid Brezhnev was alive, People were tired of this old man and the stagnation in the country. However, when Brezhnev died and the Soviet Union collapsed, people started viewing Brezhnev as this kind of as a grandpa type figure who gave them happy childhoods, stuff like that.
Healthcare was free, in theory, but you could only get decent and timely treatment if you had influence, connections, and cash to pay the bribes. Everyone was educated, but there were strings attached. If you went to college, the government decided what your career would be and where you'd live. Racial and ethnic strife was limited, yes, but only because the government ruled by fear and terror, imprisoning millions of people, so-called enemies of the state, in a vast network of concentration camps known as gulags. These enemies included my great-grandparents, who met in one of these gulags.
This sounds like a lot of bullshit that his great-grandparents met at the gulag. It's kind of like if I told you my parents met at a maximum security prison. The gulags is the system of camps spread across Russia, and especially in Siberia, where political prisoners, but also regular prisoners, would be sent to do hard labor. And in certain gulags, things were very tough. In other ones, less so. Some of these gulags were more like death camps where many people died, and others were more comfortable relative to the. But the thing about them is that they didn't have mixed population. This is primarily affects men. The gulag. I haven't heard of hard labor camps for women. Maybe they did exist. I'm not a historian. But the thing about it is that they are segregated. This is a prison. And so when he says that his great-parents met at the gulag, it makes no fucking sense. So I dug a little deeper into it and I found this interview. Maybe this interview will clarify what the hell he's talking about.
I come from 3 generations of people who were living in a totalitarian dictatorship and suffering the consequences. Being my grandmother lives in the UK now. You can go and talk to her. She's alive today. She was born in a gulag. Born in a gulag.
Was that possible, to be born and survive?
Well, what happened was her father was a very respected engineer who ended up in the gulag. And so he had some privileges. And one of them was when he got together with my grandmother's mother, they were actually allowed to live separately from the camp, etc. But she was born in the gulag.
So here's my thinking about this. It's either you're in the camp, in which case you're in the gulag, or you're outside of the camp raising family, which makes you not be part of the gulag. Now, you might be oppressed, maybe you're exiled. Some people were suspicious people from the point of view of the Soviet Union were exiled from large cities. They realized that they put a lot of smart people in the gulag, and so they created special conditions for them where they could actually work and contribute to science and Soviet technology while still being in prison. So all these things happened. But once you're out of the camp, you might be oppressed in many ways. Maybe you're not allowed to leave a specific area or whatever, but you're not in the gulag. A gulag is a labor camp, a segregated labor camp where you're among old dudes. You can't start a family there. It makes no sense. So I think that the relationship between his ancestors' relationship with the system is a bit more complicated than what he's presenting here. He clearly won freedom for himself, relatively speaking. He clearly won certain privileges, and so you can't talk about him as being a regular guy in the gulag, because a regular guy in the gulag doesn't have enough to eat, and it's not going to have any love affairs unless it's with a female nurse or something like that. And the one thing about the gulags under Stalin is that everybody there would get the same ration, like among the I'm not talking about the privileged scientists who had better conditions, but everybody got the same portion among the general population. And so like a big guy like myself, I would die first. If I was in the toughest camps, I would just die first because I wouldn't have enough meat. I wouldn't have enough food for myself. So that's kind of a stupid thing that they did. giving everybody the exact same portion. A horrible way to die in some of these camps.
Every morning, guards would randomly select 3 prisoners and throw them into the icy waters of a nearby lake to drown in front of the whole camp. New York Times reporter Walter Duranty, a Stalin apologist, once wrote, "You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs." But in the Soviet Union, there were no omelettes, only broken lives, broken dreams, broken bodies. It may be hard to believe this now, but for most of its existence, the Soviet Union was the envy of many progressives, academics, and celebrities. America should be more like communist Russia, they said, more equal, more equitable, more emancipated. This view was born of sheer ignorance. The USSR had no virtues worth emulating.
I think the USSR had some virtues worth emulating, specifically the commitment to science and technology. You know, the first man in space, the first lunar mission, unmanned lunar mission, the first satellite, the first international space station. You know, the Soviet Union has achieved a lot when it comes to the space race and the commitment to science and technology. And in fact, after Sputnik was launched, America put in billions and billions of dollars into science education and development. And so in that sense, it was emulating the Soviet Union, or at least competing with the Soviet Union. Now that doesn't justify the whole Soviet experiment. Those achievements don't, but I would say that there is at least something worth emulating.
When gullible Westerners visited, they saw what the regime wanted them to see. Literally, movie sets of a worker's paradise. There was even a phrase for it, a Potemkin village. And there was also a phrase for the Westerners who were fooled by this facade, useful idiots. Of course, no one in the Soviet Union was fooled. They weren't living the dream, they were living the nightmare. Having been raised in that worker's paradise, I am sensitive to any promises of utopia. Yes, in a perfect world, everything would be free and everyone would follow their bliss while riding unicorns to the end of the rainbow. But we do not live in a perfect world, and we never will. Every sensible person knows that.
Way to be a bummer, my dude, Tavarish Kisin. What's with the negativity? I'm still waiting on my unicorn, and I'm gonna ride. I want to ride on my unicorn. You know what, my friends? I want to ride on my unicorn across a rainbow of nuance, across a rainbow of complexity, across a rainbow of the messy history and a complicated history that actually happened. A rainbow of complexity, and I will ride across it on my unicorn of nuance. So again, in case you're very stupid, I want to reiterate some points here. I have no nostalgia for the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a human experiment that at its worst days was just profoundly horrible. Millions of people starved because of these types of experiments. Millions of people starved in Ukraine, in Russia, in China, and elsewhere. A lot of innocent people lost their life. The Soviet Union before Khrushchev and after Khrushchev are different systems as far as their bloodlust. You know, the later Soviet Union became less repressive, but it was still repressive. I don't have nostalgia for it, but I just think it's kind of silly to present yourself as when you were 11 years old when you left, and you left the collapsing Soviet Union ruled by Gorbachev, that this is not some sort of a great, platform for anything. Your parents decided to leave and they took you. Other parents decided to stay and they have kids in Russia, whatever. So yeah, my friends, I want to wish all good things to you. Hope all is well in your life. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, like and subscribe, and consider Patreon if you're loaded with cash. If you have a lot of money, if you're managing an Arby's or something, or managing a Wendy's, why not give me a little money so I can continue with this enterprise. Anyway, my friends, thank you for watching. Be well.
Ты пришло, ты сбылось, и не жди ответа. Без тебя, как жилось мне на свете этом. Тот, кто ждет, все снесет, как бы жизнь не била, лишь бы все это все не напрасно было.
Танцуют все!
Вдруг, как в сказке, скрипнула дверь. Все мне ясно стало теперь. Столько лет я спорил с судьбой ради этой встречи с тобой. Нес я где-то плыл за моря, знаю, это было не зря. Все на свете было не зря, не напрасно было. Вот как в сказке скрипнула дверь, все мне ясно стало теперь. Столько лет я спорил с судьбой ради этой встречи с тобой. Вез я где-то плыл за моря, знаю, это было не зря. Все на свете было не зря, не напрасно было.